Hey guys, Jenna here, and today we're roasting up some beets. So I love roasted beets. Who doesn't? If you don't, you're not eating them right. But anyhow, I've had so many beet salads that are served with like goat cheese or feta cheese or blue cheese, and I'm just kind of over it. And I really wanted to find a way to serve beets that would be a more well-rounded meal for somebody who's vegetarian or vegan, and this is totally vegan, by the way. So I decided to make a cannellini bean mash. It is seriously so delicious, guys. It is luscious, it's flavorful, and I'm calling it a mash because it's not like a true puree. It does have a lot of texture to it, and I flavored it with some fresh oregano from my garden and lots of garlic in true Jenna fashion. So anyhow, we whole roast the beets, we cut them up, we saute greens, and we use the beet greens and the beet stems, so we're using the whole beet, and then put that over that delicious, luscious, garlicky cannellini bean mash. And then to top it all off, just to counteract the sweetness of the beets and add a little acid, I am glazing the beets in a fig balsamic vinegar. This is so delicious. It's the perfect dinner or great addition to your Thanksgiving recipes. So I hope that you enjoy. Please be sure to subscribe to my page for more videos and comment below to let me know if you liked it. So we'll start by prepping our beets, and I am using a whole beet with the stems and greens because I really love to use the stems and greens. The stems are mild, but they have a nice crunchy texture. The leaves are also very mild, but they cook up really nicely, so I don't see why not to use the whole thing. Just make sure that you clean them really, really well before you begin cutting. So I'm cutting off the little tip off the beetroot, removing the stem, and then there's this little kind of like hard chunky piece that was attached to the root that I'm going to cut off as well. And we're just going to set the stems aside to cut for later and set our beets aside. Now once you have cut all of the beets off of the stems, it's time to roast them in the oven. So we're going to wrap them in a small piece of tin foil really tight, and then you're going to put them on a roasting pan so that they don't leak all over your oven, and cook these at 400 degrees for about 45 minutes. So now to prep our greens, we're going to just cut the stems into little bite-sized pieces, cut the leaves into nice little bite-sized pieces, and then just because I wanted to have a little bit more greens, I've picked some kale from my garden. I'm going to cut the stems off with the kale and just use the greens for this. The stems, when they're kind of young kale, are a little bitter for me. And now to prep our cannellini bean mash. So we're putting some olive oil in a pan on medium heat and adding a little less than a quarter of an onion. It's not a lot of onion. And then we're also going to add 3 cloves of just really roughly chopped garlic. The garlic adds a lot of flavor to this. And as you know, I put garlic in pretty much everything. So once those have cooked up and have softened a bit, we're going to add ½ a cup of vegetable broth. And this is going to help just to kind of thin the mash out a bit. And then we're adding a small can of rinsed cannellini beans, and of course add a little bit of salt and pepper. And then we're going to add a tablespoon of fresh oregano to this, and cook this on low heat for about 5 to 10 minutes, just until all of the flavors have kind of melded together. And then once this is cooled, you're going to put this in a food processor and mash it all up. So we want to add about ½ of a lemon, just the juice from ½ of a lemon, for a little bit of acidity for this. And then puree it up. You don't want it to be a really thin puree. This isn't a soup. It's not really a true puree. You really truly want it to be like the texture of mashed potatoes. So much flavor in here. It's so luscious and delicious. Now to finish our salad, we're going to cook about ½ of an onion sliced on medium-low heat. You want to cook these down for about 10 minutes until they get nice and soft, just a little bit crispy on the edges. This is going to add a lot of color and extra flavor to our greens. Of course, as always, make sure that you add plenty of salt and pepper to flavor it. And then once these have cooked down for about 10 minutes on medium-low heat, it's it's time to add our greens. So we're just gonna go ahead and put all of the stems, the beet greens, and the kale that we chopped up into this pan, and you're just cooking this down until the leaves are just wilted. You don't want anything to be mushy, and you want the stems to still have a little bit of a bite for texture. Now our beets have come out of the oven and they are fork tender. They're nice and juicy and sweet and delicious, but they still have this kind of thick skin on the outside. So once they've cooled, I take a paper towel and I just really carefully pull that skin off and set it to the side. So now you have a really nice, smooth, juicy beet. And then for the salad, we're going to chop them up into small bite-sized pieces, kind of like quarters. They don't have to be perfect though. I actually think it looks a lot prettier on the plate if they're not all symmetrical. And I'm cutting this on a plate so that I don't stain my wooden cutting board. So you'll definitely want to be mindful of that because these beets will stain everything. So now to add a nice little bit of acidity to our sweet beets, we're going to toss them in a nice balsamic glaze. So I got this really beautiful fig balsamic from my friend Cindy, and I've just added a splash to a pan on low heat. You really don't want to cook this too high because it'll get really gross and sticky. You just want to quickly toss the beets in the balsamic, and then you've got a nice little glaze. And then once that's finished, we're ready to plate all of this up. So the thing that I really love about this is that, like I said, I love a good beet salad, but I wanted to find a way to make this a more well-rounded meal or dinner for somebody who's vegan or vegetarian. So the cannellini mash really adds enough protein to make this super well-rounded meal, and it's so creamy and so luscious and flavorful, and just kind of the perfect vehicle for these beets and greens. So we've added all of the greens, all of the beets, and now we are just going to finish it with a little bit of olive oil. And there you have our delicious roasted beets with cannellini mash. I hope that you enjoy.